Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Wednesday. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. So let's get straight into today's stories, and let's start off with some more news when it comes to Drew McIntyre and Goldberg, specifically a behind-the-scenes update when it comes to their WWE Championship match at the Royal Rumble. Now, according to Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer Radio, the decision to go ahead with Drew McIntyre versus WWE Hall of Famer Bill Goldberg at the upcoming Royal Rumble event was made on Saturday. Of course, as I mentioned, this is according to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio. Now, Meltzer has noted that the match was penciled in as the new main event of WWE's first pay-per-view of 2021 a few days before Goldberg confronted McIntyre on Monday Night Raw. Now, after McIntyre successfully defended the WWE Championship against Keith Lee Monday night, Goldberg came out and then accused McIntyre of not respecting the WWE legends who came before him and were on the stage as part of Raw Legends Night. He then challenged Drew McIntyre to a title match at the Royal Rumble. Now, the Observer added that Goldberg showing up on Raw wasn't a swerve or a last-minute call because WWE brass decided over the weekend that they had, quote, nobody ready to face McIntyre at the Royal Rumble and felt Goldberg was the best choice. Now, Goldberg previously had called out Roman Reigns, and there were rumours and reports of those two superstars facing off at WrestleMania 37 for the Universal Championship. Now, there's no word yet on if WWE plans to go ahead with Goldberg versus Reigns at some point. Of course, we know that Goldberg reportedly has 2 matches per year on his WWE contract, which runs, of course, through 2023. Now, there is so much to break down in that story alone, because there is so much that really raises eyebrows, quite frankly. First of all, they're saying that it's not a swerve or a last-minute call, yet they mentioned the decision was made over the weekend just a couple days before the event happened. That's pretty last minute, okay? I don't know, maybe they're saying, well, it didn't happen on the day. Is that how low the bar has come for these last-minute decisions now, that while it wasn't actually made the day of the show, so it wasn't really last minute, it was actually just a couple days before that they didn't have any plans and decided to come up with something completely new. The idea that it wasn't last minute, but the decision was made over the weekend. I think Meltzer even said during this whole information about the situation when it comes to Goldberg and Drew McIntyre, he said, if it feels like it came out of nowhere, it's because it did. Hence that being a last-minute decision. So I don't really know what he's talking about there. It felt like it came out of nowhere because it did. It did come out of nowhere. Everyone was surprised to see Goldberg show up on Raw Monday because we'd been conditioned over the course of the last few weeks and months that Goldberg was going to be facing Roman Reigns either at WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble or somewhere in between. Why did we think that? Because of the season premiere of SmackDown. He was hyping up on social media. He was on the bump a couple of weeks ago talking about it on social media. Every time Goldberg does something like that, he has the match eventually. So we all thought he was going to be facing Roman Reigns. So when he did show up on Monday, everyone rolled their eyes just because it's Goldberg facing a young champion who he's going to destroy again. The Fiend, Kevin Owens, comes to mind there as well. And everyone rolled their eyes because, again, it's last-minute changes, and it proves the point. And I've actually got a couple stories today that really reinforce this point that WWE doesn't do long-term storytelling anymore. Yes, maybe they do on the rare occasion if Vince McMahon and the creative powers that be really have their minds focused on something. The irony being is every time they set their minds to do long-term storytelling, it gets to the point where it's so bad that eventually they have to change. Most of the time, at this point, WWE isn't even going from week to week in terms of their storytelling. They're going from day to day, or in some cases when it comes to Monday Night Raw, they're going from hour to hour because that's how they're writing the show. This chaos we hear every single week looks like it legitimately happens every single week, and massive, massive changes, including the main event of one of the biggest shows of the year, arguably the second biggest show of the year in the Royal Rumble. Its main event is decided a couple days before they decide to actually air it on TV. That's madness. That's madness. And it goes to show, frankly, why they struggle when it comes to Monday Night Raw in terms of ratings and all that kind of stuff, in terms of creative storylines not making sense, in terms of match outcomes not making sense, because they only decide what the outcome's going to be minutes, hours, or maybe a day before it even happens. It's craziness. And yet they wonder, I just don't know why the ratings are going down, or I just don't know why people aren't satisfied with the stories we're telling, because you're making them up every single day. That's why. So it's surprising, but it's not surprising. That's one thing to break down in that story. But I think maybe the most disturbing element of that is that the WWE higher-ups, which means Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard, they're the ones that creatively are running the show in WWE, they feel that there is, quote, nobody ready to face McIntyre at the Royal Rumble and that Goldberg is the best choice. When is Goldberg the best choice to face anyone for a world championship, especially in 2021? He's 54 years old. He can only have a match that lasts 3 minutes. He's got 2 moves. The last time he tried to do a longer form match was against The Undertaker in Saudi Arabia, and look how that worked out. He was concussed in about a minute. He bled everywhere, and The Undertaker nearly got paralyzed. When is Goldberg the best choice to face Drew McIntyre? And I've actually been quite surprised. Well, I say surprised, maybe not that surprised actually, because I've seen some people on social media saying, look, if Goldberg doesn't win and then Drew McIntyre beats him, that's good for Drew McIntyre. It's something new, it's something fresh, it gives McIntyre momentum. I understand their point of view. I understand the point of view of people that say Goldberg is a ratings draw, Goldberg still gets eyeballs on the product. I understand that point of view, but I question it, frankly. What does McIntyre gain by beating Goldberg, a 54-year-old man, in 3 minutes on pay-per-view? Because that's how long the match will last. What does he gain? They'll go, oh, look at Drew McIntyre. Isn't he really strong and powerful beating up a guy that's nearly 60? How does, in terms of logic, how does that work? I understand that he's Goldberg, but the casual fan, which WWE catered to the most, would look at that and go, of course McIntyre would beat up Goldberg. McIntyre said it. On TV, it's like facing his dad. So what does McIntyre have to gain from that? What did Braun Strowman have to gain from beating Goldberg in 3 minutes at WrestleMania? Not a lot. Not a lot. And I guess circumstances were different in the sense that, yes, of course, it was a last-minute thing and all that kind of stuff. But realistically, I would have said the same about Roman Reigns. What would Roman Reigns have to gain from beating Goldberg in 3 minutes? Goldberg isn't the same Goldberg. He doesn't have the same draw and lust that he had in 2016, maybe even 2017. He doesn't, because he's lost several times now. That's the allure of the Goldberg character. Even at the old age, he's undefeatable, right? But he has been beaten. And what did The Fiend have to gain from facing Goldberg last year? Nothing. In fact, he's very, very fortunate he was able to recover, and you have to thank John Cena for helping re-establish The Fiend during their feud and their match at WrestleMania, because if The Fiend lost that match, he'd have been in a lot of trouble. So what does McIntyre have to gain from that? And you're saying if Goldberg loses, it's a massive if. We all thought when it comes to Super Showdown in 2019, we all thought the same that we're thinking now. There is no way. There is no way that WWE would have The Fiend lose to Goldberg. The Fiend, he's on fire, well, pun intended, but he's a huge monster heel. He's one of the biggest and best original characters they've produced in the last 5-10 years. They wouldn't have at that time a 53-year-old Goldberg coming and destroying him in 3 minutes when The Fiend has destroyed everyone else on the main roster, because what does that make The Fiend look like? What does that make the rest of the roster look like? That a 53-year-old man can do what no one else could on the roster. What does that make The Fiend and the roster look like? They wouldn't do that. They did it. They did it, and they'll do it again. So, again, I don't subscribe to that theory that, oh, Goldberg's the best option. No, he's not. He's not the best option. Why not have Riddle? Why not have Keith Lee even again? Why not have Braun Strowman? Why not have Jeff Hardy? There is a plethora of other talent you can use on the Raw roster to face Drew McIntyre at the Royal Rumble. And guess what? Maybe you might even make a new star in the process, right? We're desperate for new stars. The reason they bring back Goldberg at this age with his limited capacity in the ring is because WWE thinks they don't have enough big stars, homegrown stars in the company. But when they bring back Goldberg, they stop them from making new stars. It's such a paradox. And it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why they do it. Well, I don't know why they do it. It's short-term booking. It's let's get the ratings up quickly. We need to get the ratings up quickly. But once Goldberg's gone, okay, great. What will happen then? There'll be a new record low. Then they'll have the same reports and articles that come out. USA Network's furious. WWE gets the message. WWE are panicking. Reactionary changes. All of that stuff. We'll hear it over and over again. It's a never-ending cycle that is destined to repeat itself when you keep putting Goldberg in main event positions on the biggest shows of the year competing for the world titles. You're not going to make any new stars. And people would say, well, Riddle's not the same as Goldberg. He's not as big a star as Goldberg. I saw someone say to me, Jeff Hardy's the same age as Goldberg. He's 11 years younger. He's there every week and he can still wrestle. There's a massive difference there. So this idea that, well, Goldberg's a bigger star than them, that's why he needs to face Drew McIntyre. Well, how can a Riddle become a bigger star? How can a Keith Lee become a bigger star when you don't put them in main event positions on pay-per-views, on big pay-per-views to compete for the world title? How can they become big stars? It's all well and good complaining that they're not these big stars, but when you don't give them the opportunity to become big stars, what do you expect? What do you expect? It's madness. It's absolute madness. So that was, again, an eye-opener, but there's more to come. Don't worry. Let's move on to other plans when it comes to Monday Night Raw, because I mentioned about plans and plans changing at the last minute, even though Dave Meltzer doesn't call them the last minute, but we've got some update as well when it comes to original plans for the Raw Legends Night opener and main event, and some other notes with Goldberg and Drew McIntyre. So, according to PW Insider, the original plan for the Legends Night edition of Raw was to open up with WWE Hall of Famer in the ring for a promo. However, plans changed because it's Raw, and plans change every 5 minutes, and the decision was made to have Hogan do the cold open backstage. It was noted also by PW Insider that Hogan and WWE Hall of Famer Ric Flair sat in on the production meeting before Raw on Monday night. Now, first of all, before we go into the other part of this report by PW Insider, the cold open for Hulk Hogan with the, what do they call it, the H phone, and talking about tweeting and Instagramming and Facebook and YouTube and all that kind of stuff, it was bizarre. I didn't understand it. Quite frankly, I don't want to be dramatic and really reactionary here, but I mean, got to be up there, one of the worst cold opens in Raw history, right? It was awful. It was awful. And to think, when you first go on the air for Monday Night Raw, that first hour, the start of that first hour, if you look at the ratings over the course of however long Raw's been 3 hours, so since 2012, for 8-9 years, that first moment that you see for Monday Night Raw, for that first hour, traditionally is where the most people are tuning in. Because we see the pattern when it comes to Monday Night Raw's ratings. The first hour's here, then the second hour's here, and then the third hour's here. It just goes down like that. Okay? So the first thing you see on Raw you suppose would be the thing that's viewed by the most people live on cable television or around the world. And the first thing that the most people saw, the most eyeballs on your product that night saw, was Hulk Hogan doing a bad SNL cold open with an iPhone, calling it the H phone, and doing some weird promo about social media. I wouldn't be surprised if you had the minute by minutes, which I don't know that they have at this point. They probably do. I wouldn't be surprised if people saw that and go, what am I watching? Turn it off. I'm not watching SNL and a bad version. You know, I'm not watching anything like that. I'm not watching Fridays. That's a reference, which was a Friday version of like Saturday Night Live. That was terrible. What is that? So it was a horrible cold open. It really was. Now, speaking of McIntyre and Goldberg, as I mentioned, McIntyre retained his WWE Championship over Keith Lee. WWE Hall of Famer Goldberg then returned to confront McIntyre and challenge him to the Royal Rumble on January 31. Now, the original plan, according to PW Insider, was to have Randy Orton versus Jeff Hardy close Monday Night Raw, but the decision was made late in the day to close with the WWE Championship match so they could do the angle with Goldberg. To me, to be honest, that makes sense. I don't see, the only reason I could see Drew McIntyre and Keith Lee not closing the show is that they would hope it would get more viewers, because as I mentioned, at the end of that third hour, traditionally the least amount of people are watching Raw. So I could get that. If they wanted to do the big angle, they would maybe do it at the end of the second hour, or maybe even the end of the first hour to get more people buzzing about it. But then I suppose they could be concerned of a massive drop-off. If you've done your big angle at the end of the first hour, what's the point in watching the second and third hour? So I understand that. What I don't understand is that Goldberg saying about Drew McIntyre disrespecting legends when it was actually Randy Orton that was doing it the entire night. But if that is confusing, we do have a bit of an explanation about that as well, because when they decided that they were going to do the angle of McIntyre and Goldberg, by all accounts, the original plan was to have Drew McIntyre cut a promo about the WWE Legends as the final segment to set up Goldberg's entrance. However, Raw had some timing issues and ran late, so they went with the promo. And had Goldberg come out much quicker. Regarding Goldberg's surprise appearance as well, he was very much hidden backstage until it was time to make his entrance. He wasn't even listed on the script for last night's show. That's par for the course. That's pretty regular nowadays. If there's a big surprise, if there's a big angle, they don't put it on the scripts. In some cases, well, for big shows like WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, etc., not only do WWE not put the finishes on the scripts, they also hand out multiple scripts, because WWE leaks more than a sieve at this point, so that's no surprise there. I'm at least a bit thankful to hear that the plan was for McIntyre to do a promo. I don't know if he was going to disparage the legends or anything like that. Doesn't seem what the babyface champion would do, but I am glad that at least the plans were there for McIntyre to do a promo, so Goldberg's promo would make sense, even though his promo did make zero sense, because I don't think McIntyre disparaged the legends at all. My massive concern with also there, another point, is that Raw had some timing issues. We've been hearing this a lot recently, that WWE is unhappy that talent's going over their time, or WWE's have issues timing the show. Raw's a 3-hour show. If you can't time out a 3-hour show, maybe remove a couple of video packages. We see about 5 million of them during the shows. Every segment has a recap package beforehand. Maybe get rid of those and you might have a bit of extra time. The idea that WWE is struggling to, they're struggling, we're running out of time on a 3-hour show. Are you kidding me? It doesn't feel like that. It feels like you're filling a lot of time during the show. Get rid of those recap packages. Maybe have the show flow a bit better. So I don't have any sympathy for that. We're running out of time on this 3-hour show. Give me a break, honestly. It's crazy. It's crazy. Speaking of WWE plans as well, we have some updated plans and news when it comes to Roman Reigns and his plans for last week's edition of Friday Night SmackDown. And guess what? They changed as well. Paul Heyman and WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns reportedly changed creative plans for last night's Friday New Year's edition of SmackDown on Fox. Now, WWE had been advertising quite heavily that SmackDown would feature Reigns as he had made a special request of WWE management. Now, SmackDown aired and that angle never happened. Shock horror. Reigns and Heyman and Jey Uso were featured in segments, and the main event saw Kevin Owens defeat Uso in singles action, with Reigns destroying Owens after the match. But there was never a mention of the special request to WWE management and that storyline that had been advertised throughout the entirety of the week. Now, in an update, Reigns and Heyman reportedly had a hand in changing those plans. This is according to Ringside News, so take that for what you will. The special request segment was reportedly nixed in favor of what we saw instead. WWE fed the special request plans to social media, the social media team, well before those plans were changed. A source noted that once the changes were put in place, WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon didn't even want to mention or work around the announcements that had already been made on social media and the WWE website. This is what Ringside News said, quote, "Once the changes were put in place, Vince didn't even want to mention or work around the social postings," end quote. Now, it was noted that a number of things can lead to creative changes in WWE, but when a segment involves people with significant amount of creative pull, like Reigns and Heyman, then sometimes their preference can also play into things. While the announcements had already went out on social media and the WWE website, it was just too late to change, so WWE acted like they never happened. It was described as just another instance of the right hand not knowing what the left hand is really doing. Now, again, that isn't surprising, and it's not the first time this has happened. It's happened so many times over the course of the last couple of months. I remember going back, we did a preview. We got caught out by that. We did a preview here on the channel for a Raw. It might have been a couple of months ago where Drew McIntyre was going to be on A Moment of Bliss, and it just never happened. It just never happened. Despite for days, that segment was planned. I guess it was written out, that was the plan. And then, wouldn't you know it, day of the show, Vince McMahon, I don't like it, we'll get rid of it. And it's just... I don't mind plans changing, right? Especially if it's for the better. If plans change and it's for the better, I like what we saw on SmackDown Friday. So maybe what we saw last Friday was better than what was planned. I don't have a problem with that. What frustrates me, and I sympathise and empathise for the writers in WWE, is that they must be... I mentioned it's the most redundant job. It really is, because for 6 days a week they can work on a Raw or a SmackDown, work on their segments, work on their promos, they write them out. Then the day off they get ripped up and told to be written again, or notes from VKM, and they have to change the entire thing. What are they doing for 6 days? They must feel so redundant for 6 days, because whatever they're writing, they know this isn't going to air because this is going to change. Imagine working in that environment. And when it comes to the social media posts and the website posts, why can't you just change it? Why can't you just change it? Delete it. Start again. Why not? Why do you leave them up there? Or why don't you, in the storyline, go, I was going to make a special request, but I decided to do this instead? That is one line, and then suddenly it makes everything make a bit more sense. But they don't care about that. They don't care about continuity. They don't care about making sense. It's just get the product out. Let's get the product out. And again, then they wonder why people complain about storylines or matches or circumstances not making sense. It's because your writing is one half, it's one story, then it becomes another story. It's like one of those, I can't remember what they're called, but they used to have a paragraph and they'd have words missing and you could put any word you wanted in there. Venus Williams went skydiving to the supermarket on Halloween. You know what I mean? It's like, well, what? And it feels like a WWE show and storyline at this point. It's maddening. It's absolutely maddening. We have some news as well about Carlito, because I mentioned yesterday, of course, Carlito didn't show up on Monday Night Raw, despite being advertised for the Raw Legends Night previously. Now, despite being advertised for Raw Legends Night, former WWE superstar Carlito was nowhere to be seen on the show on Monday. Many fans on social media vented their frustrations regarding the false advertising of the former Intercontinental and United States champion. Carlito himself also tweeted out a GIF yesterday of seemingly shrugging off the news, going like that, going, I don't know, what's going on, further stoking the fans' interest as to what actually went on here. Now, this is an exclusive report coming from Nick Houseman at Wrestling Inc. So again, take that for what you will. This is the same person that did an exclusive saying that there was going to be no real crossover between AEW and Impact Wrestling, and it was going to be a one-off. And bear in mind, in a couple of weeks' time, you have Kenny Omega in a main event of a pay-per-view. He's been on every Impact Wrestling episode since then, and is going to be in future pay-per-view matches. So that one wasn't right. But nevertheless, they're reporting that Carlito was actually never officially booked for the show at all. WWE apparently sent feelers out to a variety of talents, including Carlito, and someone internally apparently simply just jumped the gun in announcing this appearance. This was not an issue of travel problems or him being held up due to the pandemic and precautions that go around that. We're told that there is no bad blood over the errant announcement, since it appears just to be a communication error. Carlito's last appearance on Raw was actually in 2010. His last appearance for WWE was part of the Edge and Christian show back on the WWE Network in 2016. I don't know if I fully buy it. I mean, we've just done some stories there, I suppose, that say, you know, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and that could very much fit into that path, in the sense that WWE sent all these feelers out, and then the communication team decides to do that big announcement. But also, I don't know if I believe that, because of the graphics on Monday Night Raw. If you go back to watch the initial advertisement and TV ad for Raw Legends Night, it featured Carlito. That has to go through several steps of confirmation and several steps of approval to actually air physically on TV. So I don't think it's a simple case of just, oh, the guy at WWE.com and on the social media account saw the name Carlito and they wrote it down. He was on the TV ads. So I don't know if I fully buy that. Oh, it's just a feel. It's just a communication error. I don't know this is the case. This is just speculation on my part, which maybe is wrong of me. But I wouldn't be surprised if Carlito saw the creative for Raw and saw, actually, I'm not going to really be doing anything. I'm going to be backstage. I'm going to be in a 5-second cameo where maybe Lucha House Party will give me a high five, and that's about it. He deserves way more than that. Maybe he saw that and go, why would I travel during a pandemic to do that? That seems crazy. So I don't know. Carlito seems very confused by the situation as well, considering the shrugging emoji gif. But I'm sure more will come out, and I'm sure Carlito eventually will explain what happened, or of course didn't happen in this scenario. But I'm not sure if I fully buy that. Oh, it was just a communication error. He was never booked anyway. Well, he appeared on the advertisement of the show. And surely if that was the case, when the advertisement came out on TV that first time, people in the know, Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, etc., would have seen that and go, Carlito's not booked, get him off. So I don't know if I fully buy that. I don't know if I fully buy that story. That seems a bit WWE trying to cover their tracks, or maybe someone making something up. We don't know. We have a nice post here from Amanda Huber, the widow of the late Brody Lee. Now, Brody Lee's wife, Amanda Huber, took to her Instagram story yesterday and posted a statement asking fans to stop trying to create a divide in pro wrestling, mainly between WWE and AEW. Now, Huber's statement comes after WWE released their second tribute video featuring SmackDown superstars to the former Luke Harper on Monday. While WWE opened all of their shows with a graphic in memory of Brody Lee last week, they have released 2 videos of superstars paying tribute to the former Bludgeon Brother on social media. Now, of course, AEW Dynamite, in contrast, changed last week's Dynamite to a celebration of live tribute show for the leader of the Dark Order. Now, Huber's post included a photo of WWE Intercontinental Champion Big E, taken from the tribute video that WWE put out. Big E was a very close friend with her husband. He'd been posting numerous tributes and sharing memories of John Huber on social media over the course of the last couple of weeks. She talked about why her husband left WWE, but also about what WWE gave them. This is Amanda's full statement below. I didn't want to read extracts from it. I wanted to read the whole thing. She said, quote, "So many people expect myself and my family to hate on WWE. The fact is we don't, we never have. My husband absolutely got frustrated because he wanted more than they had envisioned for him. That didn't mean he hated them. The frustration didn't change the real and genuine love that our family has for pro wrestling. WWE gave my husband a platform. It enabled him to live his dream, a dream he almost gave up on. He was able to travel the world in his dream job. He got to entertain millions of people. He got to build a beautiful life for our family. He held singles gold there. He won a bout at WrestleMania. He ticked so many dream life boxes there. He just happened to want a little bit more out of his career. That's why he left, not out of hate. Not because they're an evil company. He left because his vision didn't match theirs. The most incredible thing he took away from his time in WWE was the people that carried with him until his very last days. It wasn't one company versus another. Little Brody loves wrestling. We still watch wrestling every week. We would tune in to see Uncle Boom Boom, WWE Cesaro, and family best friend Big E, people that transcended the lines of friendship into family. The people in WWE watched my kids grow up. They loved my husband so much they welcomed my family into their arms. They became my family too. The flood of love I've received from the WWE is real and it's beautiful. In my husband's final moments, the people that surrounded my family were wrestlers. Companies didn't matter. Please, I beg you, stop trying to create a divide in wrestling. Support pro wrestling, love pro wrestling. Live your life like Brody in a way that people speak like this. And I mean, that is so powerful to me. So many times I've spoken about it here on the channel that it always feels like AEW versus WWE, or sometimes New Japan, or fans of whatever companies. And we're pro wrestling fans. It shouldn't be like that. For whatever reason, people can get so tribal about pro wrestling and about companies. If you like AEW, you can't like WWE. Or if you're a fan of WWE, why would you like AEW? I understand that people have different tastes. Pro wrestling is exactly like music. That's the way I look at it. In that there are different genres of pro wrestling. And WWE is a different genre to AEW. And Impact Wrestling is a different genre to both of them. And New Japan's a different genre. People like different genres, but they can like multiple genres. And if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. You don't have to disparage the other. You can voice your opinion. I do on here. I say I don't like certain things, and I say I like certain things. I praise certain things. I criticize certain things. But I don't disparage people for liking a product. I don't criticize people for saying, "Oh, you like WWE. What are you? You're so mainstream." I don't do that because it's stupid. It's stupid, and she's absolutely right. Especially in circumstances like this tragic passing of Brody Lee. It isn't about WWE versus AEW. Come on. I think as a community we're better than that. It's not about who did a better tribute. Now, obviously, I criticize parts of WWE's tribute. I wish they'd have done more, but I still think what they did was heartwarming, heartfelt, and incredibly emotional. Go watch the videos. It's not about AEW versus WWE, certainly in this situation, and quite frankly, it's never about that divide and about people being tribal. Support pro wrestling, enjoy it. There is an abundance of pro wrestling, arguably more pro wrestling than we've ever had, certainly in the modern era. Enjoy it, embrace it, and share your opinions on it, but don't make it WWE versus AEW. Okay, we're better than that. We're better than that. So I echo Amanda Huber's words there. Speaking of the Huber family, this was really nice last night on AEW Dark. Last night on AEW Dark, it featured a segment on YouTube where -1, Brody Lee Jr., the son of the late Brody Lee, appeared in the ring to cut a promo on Marco's stunt of the Jurassic Express. Now, after some words from Brody Jr., stunt pushed -1, who was shoved back. AEW President and CEO Tony Khan, Cody Rhodes, and others then rushed to the ring to hold them back in a pull-apart brawl until Brody Lee Jr. chased Stunt away. Khan then revealed on Twitter that Brody Jr. wrote the promo himself. He said, quote, "Brody wrote that promo himself. I asked him what he wanted to say about Marco, and he said all of that off the top of his head. It was incredible. I told him, please go out and do that. -1 is really something." It was fantastic. Honestly, it's so heartwarming segment. I saw a little bit of pushback about it with people saying, "Oh, they're just you're doing that with a young child. You're doing that with the late Brody's son." Do me a favor. It's not about that. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about AEW trying to utilize Brody Lee Jr., trying to get mainstream attention or trying to get some sympathy or publicity for using the late Brody Lee's son. It wasn't about that at all. It's about giving this child who has just lost his father over the holiday period, who is grieving, and I'm sure his world is collapsed, and I'm sure he can't really at the moment really comprehend what's going on, but his father's no longer around. It's about giving him moments of his life. It's about giving him moments that put smiles on his face. It's about having the time of his life and making him forget or not have to worry about what's going on around him right now. And AEW, like I said before, they should be absolutely commended for putting a smile on this child's face during a time which I'm sure he wouldn't usually smile that much. And then the amount of care and love that the AEW company, Tony Khan, Cody Rhodes, all the EVPs, all of the fans, all of the wrestling community have shown towards the Huber family. And I mentioned AEW, whether it's the tribute show last week for Brody Lee or the segment on the show where you had Brody Lee Jr. hit MJF with the kendo stick and you saw the big smile on his face. He's having the time of his life. And the fact that they're doing everything they can to continue to put a smile on his face and support the Huber family, whether it is emotionally or financially. It's beyond commendable. It's beyond commendable. I think they are doing such a fantastic job, and you can tell if you go watch the segment. It's fantastic. You can see Marco Stunt smiling because Brody Lee Jr. cut a good promo, and he's having the time of his life. And if that doesn't warm your heart, if that doesn't put a smile on the face, I don't know what will. Because it's fantastic to see. It's fantastic to see, and there's no doubt in my mind that Brody Lee John Huber, he would be so proud and so just. He would love to see that. He would love to see that, like we all are. We all are loving to see it. I know myself personally, I think it's fantastic to see. It's absolutely fantastic to see. Some other good news. It was concerning for a brief moment last night because Bayley posted a message on her social media last night that her younger brother Jeremy Martinez had gone missing, but in an update he has been found. Now the SmackDown superstar took to Instagram yesterday and asked fans to help find her brother, who went missing around 7:08 a.m. on Monday morning at Fort Lewis Military Base in Lakewood, Washington. The post has since been deleted as Bayley posted a follow-up in the evening saying that her brother was found within 90 seconds of posting the original request. She said, quote, "Wow, that was fast. We have located my brother within 90 seconds after posting. Thank you for all the love," end quote. Now, obviously, I don't want to get into the details of why he went missing in the first place. Nevertheless, what is good, what is positive, that he was found. He is safe now, and again, it was a really concerning story for a brief moment there, but what was really heartwarming and came out of that is that once again, social media comes together, pro wrestling community goes together, they get out that message as soon as possible, and then within 90 seconds, within a minute and a half, they get a location on him. I mean, it's a fantastic story. It's an absolutely fantastic story, and I'm glad to hear that he is well and safe. I'm glad that Bayley can now at least not have to worry about that. Some fun news here when it comes to Cardi B, because Cardi B, she's been the buzz of pro wrestling social media over the last 48 hours or so, because Cardi B, of course, she was name dropped, right, during Monday Night Raw, during the Raw Legends Night by Tori Wilson, and then since then she was going, why is everyone talking about me? Why am I getting so many social media messages regarding WWE? And then someone's obviously showed her the clip of her being mentioned on Monday Night Raw during that segment about the 24/7 championship, and then Cardi B was been talking about WWE a lot and pro wrestling for the last 48 hours or so. She said, quote, "WTF, this is not how my WWE debut was supposed to be. Vince McMahon, count your days," she wrote on the segment. Now, Lacey Evans then responded to that tweet because we got a bit of a drama between Lacey Evans and Cardi B. Wouldn't you know it? I would have never expected that at the start of the year, start of the day, start of Monday Night Raw. But Lacey Evans responded to that tweet in the afternoon and name-dropped the rapper Nicki Minaj. She said, quote, "Careful what you wish for, you nasty. We aren't Nicki Minaj. You'll get sent home with more than a busted eye," she said, referencing an incident between Cardi B and Minaj that happened a while back. Cardi B, though, obviously got worked massively by the pro wrestler because she responded to the tweet and said that a white woman could never put fear in her. Apparently not realizing that Lacey Evans was just working a social media angle, Cardi B has since deleted the tweets, but did add in a follow-up tweet, "Wow, don't ever want to hear MFers talking SH, you know the rest about me again." Lacey Evans then also said, quote, "Oh, bless your heart, Cardi B, you got it all wrong. I heard debut was giving you a friendly heads up. But since you want to be a badass, keep in mind when/if you show up to WWE, I'll kick your behind while you're listening to your music." In response to deleted tweets. So who knows? Cardi B versus Lacey Evans at WrestleMania, book it. Out of all the things, the irony that the Raw Legends Night was this massive ratings grab. It was a huge ratings grab. That's why they brought the Legends back. That's why they had the WWE Championship main event. That's why Goldberg is back on WWE TV. And the irony that the most attention that WWE got throughout all of that wasn't Goldberg, wasn't Hulk Hogan, wasn't Ric Flair. It was Cardi B in a throwaway backstage segment. I think WWE, honestly, would look at the whole Raw in general and go, well, look at the publicity we've got with Cardi B, because legitimately for about a day, for 24 hours, all Cardi B talked about on social media was WWE. She's got something like 16 million Twitter followers or something ridiculous like that. And she was speaking about how she was a big fan of the likes of RVD, Eddie Guerrero, Trish Stratus, Melina in the mid-2000s, and all of those superstars responded to her going, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe Cardi B's talking about me." So the fact that WWE got all of that attention from someone like Cardi B, you know they're absolutely loving it because they love all of that publicity, whether it's good or bad. So I guess Raw Legends Night was worth it for that very reason. As far as future appearances, I would think at this point, if WWE knows that Cardi B was a fan and she's willing to interact with all these people on social media, you can't tell me that WWE hasn't been on the phone or hasn't been talking to Cardi B's representatives now, or people that do her PR, and saying, look, whenever you want to show up, it's WrestleMania season, we can do something. And they love that celebrity WrestleMania match. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if before WrestleMania we don't get a Cardi B appearance on Raw. It just feels like it has to happen at this point, right? I feel like it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Speaking of Monday Night Raw as well, we have an update when it comes to Mickie James, because of course Mickie James was heavily advertised as a legend for Raw Legends Night, but Mickie James is still considered to be an active member of the WWE Monday Night Raw roster despite previous reports. Now, it had been rumours over the last week or so that said James may have quietly retired following her appearance at Raw Legends Night on Monday, and that she was removed from the active roster on the WWE website. Now, despite still being included on the main roster, those reports are not true. This is according to Gary Cassidy of Inside the Ropes, very reputable reporter, very good guy as well. I've worked with him in the past. He's very, very accurate and does his due diligence. So be sure to check him out on Inside the Ropes and on social media at Wrestling Gary. It was noted that James is still an active performer in WWE and has been cleared to wrestle following the broken nose she suffered back in October. Now, James was actually never drafted in the 2020 WWE draft last October, but is still a member of the Raw roster. The same went for Andrade, who is currently also out of action, recovering from a minor procedure. It's interesting to note that Mickie was recently listed as a SmackDown superstar on the Fox Sports tier list. Mickie has not wrestled since losing a number one contenders match to Zelina Vega, who is now no longer with the company, of course, on the September 21 episode of Monday Night Raw. She appeared on this week's Legends Night edition of Raw in a brief backstage segment with Angel Garza, Tatanka, and WWE Hall of Famer Sergeant Slaughter, but did not get in the ring. I didn't think at any point that Mickie James had retired or she was not going to be an active wrestler anymore. I mean, absolutely she can still go. She can still go, and I was really disappointed. One, to obviously see how her match with Asuka ended with the referee botch last year, and I wanted them to revisit that, and quite frankly I want them to revisit that more. For whatever reason, the Raw Women's division is very odd at the moment. It's very odd because apparently Asuka's just a tag team wrestler now, and the Raw Women's Championship has essentially been retired. I really don't understand it. The Raw Women's division, the way that it's booked is incredibly odd, and it just feels bizarre at this point to have someone as talented that can still go, has all the experience, like Mickie James, be sitting on the sideline. She's cleared to compete. Put her in the ring. Put her in the ring. Have her do something, right? People were so excited to see Mickie James return earlier this year. People were excited to see Mickie James face Asuka, and then they got the botch, and then we never really revisited it. It was really disappointing. And I want to see more Mickie James on Raw. So glad to hear that those reports were completely inaccurate that she'd retired. So also talk about NXT, because of course tonight is NXT's New Year's Evil event that they've been hyping up for several weeks. We know what's going to close the show, that being the main event for the NXT Championship, Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor. But we now also know that Karrion Kross versus Damian Priest will open tonight's New Year's Evil event on the USA Network. But in addition to that, WWE has also announced that Kross versus Priest will feature commercial-free action. As I mentioned previously, Kyle O'Reilly versus NXT champion Finn Balor will also air with no commercials tomorrow night. Of course, the New Year's Evil event of NXT will air tonight on the USA Network, taking place from the Capitol Wrestling Center at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. Very interesting. I mentioned this yesterday, I think, when I spoke about the main event being commercial free, that I felt that it was a statement of intent from NXT. I felt like recently, over the course of maybe the last 6 months or so, NXT's been way too passive, in the sense that they've almost been happy or just resigned themselves that they're going to lose every week to AEW in total viewership and the key demographic. What was at least making the battle, if you were, between AEW Dynamite and NXT competitive way back when is when, you know, we talk about counter programming, and I've said it previously before that NXT's sole purpose is to take viewers away from AEW Dynamite. Vince McMahon doesn't care about NXT winning or losing at this point, but he cares about taking viewers away from Dynamite and making sure AEW isn't successful. That's the main point there. But way back when it first started, NXT tried to be competitive. They did counter program, but they did that because they wanted to win. And I think that's important, and for the last 6 months or so, NXT hasn't done that, and it's reflected in the programming, quite frankly. And I'm glad to see that they're at least trying again. I think that's important. I think it's important that they're trying again with a commercial-free main event, a commercial-free opener. They're trying to get viewers into the brand and into the show. And while some people will complain, oh, you're taking viewers away from AEW and blah, 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 I don't complain about that. I see it as the same as it was in the Monday Night Wars. It's trying to win. It's trying to get total viewership, and it's trying to build up the brand, right? Competitiveness isn't a bad thing. It really isn't a bad thing. I mentioned earlier about you shouldn't draw the line in terms of being just AEW or NXT, and certainly don't be tribal and criticizing other people for watching the other, but being competitive and trying to win every week, there's nothing wrong with that. So I credit NXT for that. I really do, at least trying to put up a bit of a fight in terms of the Wednesday Night Wars. I don't have a problem with that at all. Ric Flair also, we have an update about Ric Flair, because of course we saw this weird Ric Flair and Charlotte Flair angle on Monday Night Raw this week that we spoke about yesterday, which is bizarre, about him flirting with Lacey Evans and then tripping up Charlotte Flair accidentally, maybe on purpose, I don't know. But WWE Hall of Famer Ric Flair took to Twitter yesterday and apologised to his daughter, one half of the Women's Tag Team Champion Charlotte Flair, for what happened on Raw Legends Night this week. As I mentioned, Monday night's edition of Raw, the Legends Night, saw the Nature Boy accompany Charlotte and Raw Women's Champion Asuka to the ring for their non-title loss to Lacey Evans and Peyton Royce. Now, during the match, Evans flirted with Flair during the match, which didn't sit well, of course, with his daughter. Evans later crawled to Rick on the apron, but Charlotte kicked her to the floor. Charlotte then brought Evans back into the ring and ducked a kick from Royce. Charlotte continued and ran the ropes, but Ric Flair then pulled her leg to trip her. Royce then took advantage and pinned Charlotte for the victory. Now, after the match is where the big angle took place. A stunned Charlotte sat up in the ring, looked up in shock as Lacey Evans then went over and kissed Ric Flair on the cheek, who acted annoyed and upset like he wasn't interested. Charlotte then exited the ring and got in Ric Flair's face, telling him to stay out of her business again. Charlotte asked if her father understood what she was telling him. He just nodded and walked back up the ramp while staring at her. Charlotte then elaborated this on Raw Talk, talking about she's just a bad loser and she loves her father, but she doesn't want to be the daughter of Ric Flair or anything like that. As I mentioned yesterday, it wasn't totally clear if this was just a one-off or they were building to a storyline. I think it was a one-off. The thing that is kind of leaning me to go, oh, there might be something more to that, is that, of course, Ric Flair was there when Charlotte won the Women's Tag Team Championship with Asuka at TLC, so maybe this is a bit more, I don't know. There's been a lot of Ric Flair on WWE TV over the past 12 months, so we'll have to wait and see. But the Nature Boy did take to Twitter yesterday afternoon and apologised for what happened. He thanked Charlotte for letting him come visit her at Raw. He said, quote, "Sorry, I messed up. It won't be the first time and probably won't be the last. A father and daughter's bond is unbreakable. Thank you for letting me come visit Charlotte at WWE #Legends Night." Charlotte responded in the afternoon as well and said she could never stay mad at her father. She said, quote, "I can never stay mad at you. I love you as big as the sky, Dad." Charlotte also tweeted a photo of she and Rick sharing a moment at ringside last night. Evans, though, being the consummate heel when after she'd finished arguing with Cardi B on social media, tweeted a good morning message to Rick this morning and taunted Charlotte during it. She said, quote, "Now come give your stepmama some sugar," Evans wrote in response to Charlotte's tweet to her dad on never staying mad at him. So I don't know if it's going to be something more. Maybe it's just going to be a storyline when it comes to Lacey Evans and Charlotte Flair. I really, really hope they don't go around where Ric Flair marries Lacey Evans on WWE TV. My concern is it's still a show run by Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. They will do outlandish stuff to get people's attention. They're desperate. So I genuinely wouldn't put it past them doing a Lacey Evans Ric Flair storyline on WWE TV. I think of Al Wilson and Dawn Marie comes to mind there. I don't know. I've said it out loud. Maybe that's too much now. Maybe I've actually wished it into existence. It wasn't a wish. I really hope it doesn't happen. We'll go to some New Japan news, because obviously there's been a ton of New Japan going on with Wrestle Kingdoms Night 1 and 2. We spoke about what happened in Night 1. Let's talk about what happened in Night 2, because Kota Ibushi retained the IWGP Heavyweight and Intercontinental Championships against Jay White at yesterday's Wrestle Kingdom 15 at Night 2 in a match that went just over 48 minutes, with Ibushi picking up the pinfall victory. Now, previously, the night before, Ibushi won both titles against Naito in the Night 1 main event, but earlier in the show, Sanada defeated Evil and then showed up after the main event to challenge Ibushi. The dual champion agreed to a future match, but an exact date was not announced. I must say, it's just par for the course, but the Wrestle Kingdom both nights were fantastic. That second main event, it's really hard to say which main event was better, with Ibushi versus Naito or Ibushi versus Jay White. I'm a huge Jay White fan, and we'll touch on him in a second, but I would probably lean to The second match, although I do agree with some people when they're saying maybe it was slightly too long. I mean, 48 minutes, that's a long time, but if the match is good and the action's good, then I don't really have that much of a problem with it. Kota Ibushi's a star. I mean, just look at the look he has. I was mentioned yesterday, WWE must be thinking, man, we were this close to holding on to him. We were this close. They got him over, do some shots of NXT and the Cruiserweight Classic. Didn't manage to keep him, and now he's a dual champion in New Japan. Maybe not for long, though. We'll touch on that in a second. Speaking of Jay White, though, Jay White has certainly raised some eyebrows when it comes to New Japan and his future, because Jay White has said he's done with New Japan after today. At the time of recording, New Year's Dash is happening right now, but he said that he's done with New Japan after the New Year's Dash event. Now, Jay White failed to become the IWGP Intercontinental and Heavyweight Champion in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom 15 at Night 2 against Kota Ibushi. At the post-match press conference, White revealed that his contract ends with New Japan after the New Japan New Year's Dash event. He said, quote, "I go through all of that for what? You don't even have the tiniest bit of respect, the tiniest bit of empathy to where you would think to help somebody in need. I will never be appreciated like I should be. I see it. I see it now. I'm out here in Japan wasting my life away for what? During a global pandemic. I'm not going to do this anymore. If this is all it's for, I'm not going to do it. If they want to make me show up tomorrow, I'll show up tomorrow if you want me to. But after that, that's it. I'm done." Now, as far as whether this is legitimate or not, I doubt it. I doubt it. Nobody is really coming forward to say that he is legitimately leaving. I do remember a story about 12 months ago saying that WWE, specifically Triple H, was very, very interested in Jay White, and he was a big fan, a big fan of Jay White, and he really wanted to bring him to WWE, maybe going through NXT first. Now, that was a year ago. And the caveat to that story was Jay White's contract does expire in a year's time. Well, it's 12 months later, and Jay White does have a contract that is set to expire. Now, I don't know if he's re-signed a new deal. What that report did say 12 months ago was that Jay White is very, very happy in New Japan. He's one of the biggest stars they have. He's still very young. I think he's 28 years old or something like that. He has a big future ahead of him, and he's very happy doing what he's doing in New Japan. He just main evented Night 2 of Wrestle Kingdom, and he will eventually be a world champion once again. I have no doubt about that. So I don't think it's legitimate. I think he'll stay. Even if he went to WWE, personally, I don't think he would even go through NXT. Frankly, at this point, it would be a step down from New Japan to go to NXT. No disrespect to those that have, but I think that is the case. He would go straight to the main roster, but he's still very, very young, and he still has a huge future and career ahead of him, so I don't expect him to leave anytime soon. Of course, we'll have to see what happens at New Year's Dash. As mentioned, it's going on at the time of recording right now, but I expect him to stay. I don't see him leaving New Japan anytime soon. Could be wrong. Been wrong before. And finally, speaking of Kota Ibushi and the dual championships he currently holds, apparently, during a press conference following day 2, Kota Ibushi has requested that New Japan unify the two championships. This is what Ibushi had to say, quote, "The IWGP Intercontinental Championship is the greatest belt there is. The IWGP Heavyweight Championship is the strongest belt there is. I want to unify these titles." Ibushi continued, "I want to be both the greatest and the strongest. Nobody has challenged me for just one of these titles. Then what does a double championship mean? I want to unify them. Then I will make my ultimate dreams come true." Now, I think the reaction to this has been pretty sour, to be honest. Like, I understand maybe there might be too many titles in New Japan, whether you've got the heavyweight title, the intercontinental title, the US title, etc. I get it. I understand it, but they're really nice titles. I don't want them to be unified. I personally, if you're gonna just say that Kota Ibushi is gonna be the heavyweight champion, have him lose the Intercontinental title. If you don't want him to lose, do a Keith Lee and just vacate it. Don't get rid of the Intercontinental Championship. If anything, I think the IWGP Heavyweight Championship is probably the best looking heavyweight championship around in pro wrestling right now, but I'm also a massive fan of that Intercontinental title, and it has so much history as well. I think of Shinsuke Nakamura wearing it, etc. Chris Jericho, Naito. I'm a really big fan of that look of that title. I really don't want to see it go away and it be unified, so hopefully they don't do that, but it looks like that's going to be the direction that they're heading in. I hope not, though. I really do hope not. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the news stories we've talked about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling. Ton of Impact stuff to get into today as well. New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So get involved in the community, drop a comment below, and all opinions, of course, are welcome here on the channel. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get to people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.